Mr. Morrissey. I'm the math department head, and I'm here to talk about my son Owen, who's 10 years old and has autism.
My little brother Nicholas has autism.
All right, so I'm Miss Murphy. I'm an adjustment counselor here at BHS, and I'm so happy to be sharing my story about our family and how autism has impacted us and how it's impacted me in school as well.
So, for example, Owen has a difficult time communicating, which is something common with kids with autism. We think of him as being nonverbal. Owen uses a device we call the talker to communicate. It's a program on his iPad. But for Owen, it just seems like he prefers to be somewhat quiet, although he can use single words, orally to communicate. Owen likes to learn things, or really needs to learn things step by step. And so when he was learning to brush his teeth or learning to ride a bike, we had to be very systematic with a lot of help from professionals to try to help us help Owen to learn these tasks. Owen for sure lacks social awareness, which is something with kids with autism. So even students here in our own school who have autism, who might be in the cafeteria eating their lunch alone, they might not be craving someone to sit with and someone to talk with. And so I can see Owen for sure in his school sitting in the cafeteria, and he'd be completely fine being alone, just eating his peanut butter or whatever he likes to eat in the cafeteria. In that same sort of idea, Owen for sure lacks safety awareness, and so when we're in parking lots, it's definitely somewhat of a stressful situation for us as parents, because sometimes there's this thing called bolting, which means you sort of run away from either your house or maybe your car in a parking lot, and it can definitely become a safety issue. They say kids with autism are very sensory seeking, and so what that means is he flaps his hands, which is called a stim. It's something that makes him feel good, so he just would sometimes be flapping his hands or jumping up and down. That's one reason why we have a trampoline at our house. He can spend hours on the trampoline, or he could spend hours listening to the same song over and over again because he seems to do things sort of on repeat. His latest stim now is playing with his belly button, which sort of it can actually get in the way of things that he's doing or get in the way of his learning, because he's just so fixated on just putting his hand in his belly button. In terms of helping all kinds of kids with autism, many kids are it's very important to follow a strict schedule. So in your own classroom, teaching kids with autism, having a clear agenda and having clear learning plans is quite important, because it's important to know what's coming next. Because if you don't know that, there's somewhat a little bit of uncertainty for a kid with autism, or I'd say any kid. And then finally, Owen does, like most typical kids, he loves to ice skate, he loves swimming, he loves riding his bike, he loves swimming. Oh, I said that already. He likes hiking. And I think whenever possible, if towns can have recreational programs that are adaptive to try to be more inclusive of kids with autism, I think is a really important thing. And I appreciate this opportunity from the peer leaders to help spread a little bit more awareness about autism. So thank you very much.
So I work with some students here and support them as a counselor to help them with their social learning challenges. But I also have a 5-year-old son, MJ, and he was diagnosed with autism at about 2 years old. So I've been able to both be a parent of a child with autism and also a professional working with students with autism. And I feel blessed to be able to say that and do that, because I absolutely love working with the students here, all students. But I love working with students with autism because they challenge the way I think, they challenge the way I do things, and I love that their perspective is different because it challenges me to be better and think differently. As far as being a parent of a son with autism, MJ's my world, and him having autism doesn't really change how much I love him or how much we care about him, but it has changed. Well, we have to take a different perspective when we parent and how we do things. And again, it's his differences challenge me as a parent to see things differently, not necessarily the way that I intuitively see things, but trying to understand the way that he sees things and parenting based upon that. I think that his diagnosis of autism has made me better as a parent, as a person, and as a professional, because I now know what it's like to be on the other side of things, of having a child with autism, and I think it helps me relate with parents here that I work with and understand the challenges of that. But I don't like to think of it as a bad thing, because I think it's been such a blessing in my life, and I think that if I could have people understand one thing about students with autism that you're with or families you work with, is that people with differences, whether it's autism, whether it's a disability, or whether it's just kids being different than one another, I think that everyone can learn from those differences. And the challenge is to be accepting of those differences and connect with people who are different than you, because the world would be pretty bland if we were all the same. So I don't feel like it's a bad thing. I don't feel sad or upset. I feel blessed that I'm able to work with students that have these learning challenges, and I feel that my son's differences are awesome, and I love them about him. But as a parent, I do get scared about what that means for him in the future. I'd be lying if I didn't say that. But part of my job as a parent is to help other people understand and hope that people will want to connect with him even if he's a little different. So how we recognize my son's differences, he had a speech delay, and if you think of little kids, he had a tough time sitting at circle time. So from that, we had to go to a bunch of appointments, and he was diagnosed. And my life pretty much revolves around him and his services after school. I think that's one of the challenges, is that every day after school, I bring him to speech, I bring him to OT, I bring him to ABA therapy, but he also does very typical things. He goes to swim lessons, he goes to an after-school program, he plays soccer. So one of the things that is wonderful but also scary for me is that his disability is invisible. I think if you saw my son, you would never ever think that he has autism. He looks quite typical. So some people might say he's higher functioning, he's verbal. But my fear with that is sometimes his behaviors or his challenges might be misperceived as him being kind of naughty or bad or different. So my job as a parent is to help people understand his differences. He is on an IEP at school. He's in kindergarten. He's in a typical class. He needs help with staying on task and writing. His fine motor skills are tough. His organization is tough. But the people he works with, his kindergarten teacher and his staff, are wonderful. So it's always comforting sending him to school because people take care of him.
Autism has impacted me in many ways. It's taught me to be patient, be self-caring, selfless, help others, be there for others, be supportive, understand other people's situations, and be grateful for what I have, and just try to be there for anyone who needs help.
My little brother Nicholas has autism. Once we found out, it was hard for my family because we almost didn't want to believe it because we were worried how it would impact his future. But we got him the support that he needed. The school system in Bedford specifically has been really good about giving him any help he needs. And at school, he has a big classroom, which is the regular classroom that he's in, and then he has a small classroom where he works on social skills and figures out math and whatever class he's struggling in himself. And for me personally, I feel like it's actually brought me closer to my little brother because I'm able to help him more, and I realize what he needs and why he acts certain ways. For example, if he gets really happy, he might squeeze your arm or hit someone because he just doesn't know how to react to that emotion. But ever since we started getting him the support he needed, he has been able to control that, and he's learning what correct social skills to use. And yeah.
Personally, I got into special education because my sister was diagnosed with autism. We have an 11-year difference. She's now 22 years old. And one of the things that I would love to share with those who are trying to understand what autism and ASD is that just because a person has a diagnosis of ASD doesn't mean that they can't live a full and fulfilling life and have all of the successes that you or I would expect to have. My sister is 22. She is graduating from Central Connecticut State University this May with her degree in accounting. She's a whiz with numbers. One of the things that makes it hard for her is because there's an assumption that if you have a disability, there's going to be some physical tell that you have a disability, and those with ASD often don't have a physical tell. So when a person is working with them or meeting them, they don't understand. They just think that the person is quirky or weird, and I would hope that as people become more educated, they recognize that not all disabilities are physical, and some disabilities affect others in terms of their interpersonal relationships. For my family, when my sister was diagnosed with autism, it was education for all of us on understanding the hidden rules and being able to talk about those and explain them explicitly. There are tons of things that we do on an everyday basis that we don't think about that a person who has autism can't recognize, including sarcasm, including sometimes reading facial expressions, sometimes understanding the nuances in relationships, cognitive flexibility, being able to shift gears really quickly are all challenges that my family had to learn about, all things that we had to educate ourselves on, and then practice explicitly in our home so that my sister would have the best opportunity to be successful as an adult.
My brother has autism, and he's very energetic and makes the room light up a lot. It's pretty good at home. It's not like he's different or anything. He's still the same. He just has that autism. That's it. Usually, I don't like when people joke about special need kids or anything like that because I don't think it's funny.
In order to keep their identities anonymous, we will be reading the perspectives of students here at BHS.
I was diagnosed when I was 10, I think. Before that, however, I could not get the help I needed. But now, with my IEP, I can go on walks and get my energy out in a more effective way. I feel like during middle school, nobody understood what I needed, and that was probably my biggest challenge.
Sometimes I find it hard to talk to people, even those that I'm closest with.
Having autism feels like a curse. It's something that takes over my life. However, unlike any other curse, I don't know what it exactly does to me. I just know that it makes me different from the rest, and that I can't ever be like them because of this curse. I have to give up a class just because I have autism. I couldn't even have art this year because of it. I wish I was normal, that I talked normally, acted normally, and loved normally. It feels like I'm trapped in a cage, and outside of it is a normal life.
For students here at BHS, how can you help? How can you be more understanding or challenge yourself with students here that may be diagnosed with autism or may have some challenges that are similar or disabilities that look different? I think that differences scare people because there's a lack of understanding, but I think you have to work through your fears and do your best to connect with people. So, like I said, my son's disability is invisible, so I think the challenge is when you see someone having a tough time or maybe there's a behavior that makes you uncomfortable, trying to understand that it might be coming from a place of their disability rather than them just being behavioral or, I don't know, misperceived as weird or awkward. And I think that the students who have visible disabilities, they want to connect. Everybody wants to connect. It's a human, it's a need that we all have. So whether you see a student with autism or you see someone who's sitting alone, I think that as a human being, you have a responsibility to try and connect with them. And that's as simple as just saying hi or smiling with them, or that really can make someone's day, or including them and being an ally to them, because we can't expect you guys to know everybody's challenges, but where humans connect is the fact that we all have them. And we come into school every day carrying whatever our challenges are. And it's just important to be understanding of that. As much as we're all different, we all experience pain and wanting to feel included. So I think as a community, you should be working hard as students to try and connect with each other and challenge yourself to maybe feel uncomfortable, because I think on the other side of that, you'll see is that people's differences will make you better.